The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to Marketing with Purpose, a segment of the Bliss Business Podcast, where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes beyond the numbers. I'm Tulio, and in each episode, we sit down with marketing experts to explore their leadership approach and strategies that drive performance and resonate with their audience. Together, we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and how purpose and empathy can transform the way brands connect with people. So let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Becky Beyer, Vice President of Marketing for Pillar to Post. Becky brings a wealth of experience from franchising industries, including real estate, for her role at Pillar to Post. She started her career in marketing and communication at Greyhound Bus Lines before moving into real estate franchising with Anywhere Real Estate, which is now Compass. She worked directly with brokers and agents to build local marketing plans. During her time at Anywhere, she worked across brands including Century 21, ERA, and Better Homes and Garden, and led teams working on franchise sales enablement tools, recruiting, digital strategy, and industry events. We're going to explore aligning marketing with business growth. I'm very excited to dive into this, Becky. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Tulio. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, before we go ahead and dive into this, I'd love to hear, why was aligning marketing with business growth the topic you chose to explore with us today? And why is this important right now?
I think it's very important right now. A lot of times you will hear, even in a company, if sales are down or things need to be cut, the first thing to go is marketing. That is the wrong approach, right? Because marketing is what drives not only awareness, but it drives your revenue growth. And so it's very important for everybody in a senior leadership team and executive team to understand the power of marketing. It's not a nice to have, it's imperative to have. And if you look at companies who cut back on that, they will see that usually their sales have gone down if they cut back on marketing. And then it's the first thing they bring back. So it's this really bad cycle sometimes of, we don't need this. We're going to put our focus somewhere else. And then they see the negative effects of it and it's brought back. But that continuous marketing is so very important. And that's why I thought, let's talk about that today.
I love it. That's been a contention for a long time, where marketing is treated as an expense instead of looked at it as just a strategic investment. And I actually authored 2 white papers that we're going to make available shortly on Zero Company website that speak to the importance of having a baseline and the lag effect of what happens when you play with these bursts up and down. And it's interesting to see the impact it has on franchising and also in wealth management space. Those are the 2 areas we focused on. And oddly enough, sometimes the impact doesn't happen till a year later. And so you cut the expense, you're like, see, we're doing fine, right? And then you hire someone back in, and it's like, nothing's happening. And it's like, well, because of what you did the year before. All right, so let's.
We didn't even plan that, Tulio. We didn't even plan that.
No, and that's why the correlation isn't always there. And it's important to understand that there is a science behind marketing, and people don't see it often as a science, and that's a problem. But the reality is, CMOs are often pulled between near-term campaign results and long-term brand building. It's this dance, right? Now, how do you ensure your marketing strategy stays aligned with company growth goals? And where do you find the biggest friction points in making that happen?
I think the biggest friction point, especially when you're talking about franchising, is that we can do a lot from the brand building, the 30,000 foot arena. So we're up there, we're trying to drive that brand. So to give you that cover in your local market. But what I can't do is I cannot determine and I cannot have a fixed reaction of how our franchisees interact in their markets, how they their customers in their markets, right? So that's the biggest drop-off point for me, is that I no longer have control at that point where the transaction is going to transact, but with a franchisee and no longer the franchisor.
Well, okay. So how do you work through that?
So we do a lot of training. So in our business, one of the most important relationships is between an inspector and a realtor. And one of the things that I talked about when I first came on here, I'll be honest, is there was a lot of friction between inspectors and realtors. They didn't talk about them in a great way, or, it was kind of antagonistic. And I was like, everybody listen, this is your main source of income. It does us absolutely no good to have an antagonistic relationship with realtors, right? No good. There's nothing good that can become a part of that. So let's turn that around. Let's think about your part to them. A realtor has spent years, maybe months, getting that client. They have spent months finding them the home of their dream, right? They're ready. They have gotten them to the end. The inspector comes in at the end of that transaction. They've gotten them through everything. That end of the transaction, that realtor has to decide to put their income in an inspector's hands when they may not know. They don't know how they do an inspection. They don't know how they deliver results. That's asking a lot of a realtor, right? Because if I said to you, Tulio, put your month's salary in my hands, you would be like, I just met you. I have no intention of doing that. And so that is literally what we're asking. So how do we get by that? Is first, I wanted to change that relationship with realtors, right? They're not all great, but they're not all bad either. And you need to understand their mindset. So it's not just like, why don't they trust me? I'm a great inspector. No, you have to understand where you stand in that transaction and what they need from you to feel comfortable. So it was, you need to establish a relationship with them, right?
I love it. You're the go or no go gatekeeper from their point of view. So,
right.
I mean, what you're describing is really the application of empathy, is being purposeful and empathetic with the idea that understanding how the other is experiencing their lived experience is different than what we think it could be. And bridging those gaps is so key. But sometimes you're in high stakes situation, like, the brand's in crisis, there's a market downturn. And it's harder sometimes to maintain that sense of purpose and empathy while also making quick strategic decisions to keep the business on track. So how do you balance that? Does that come up as a challenge for you in the past?
Yeah, I mean, we are so closely tied to real estate, right? As home inspectors, as you can imagine. So when the real estate market dips, we dip. Now, one of the things that I always state to them is, do not let a realtor's perception of the market become your perception of the market. And what I mean by that, as a brand, we do not have 60% share of the market. Okay, we do not. We have probably less than 5, maybe 5. So I don't care where, I know this sounds harsh, but I don't care where the real estate market goes. Our inspectors have business to get. They can go take it from somewhere else. So that's what we want to start implementing in the market, programs that we have. One is Try, Trust, Believe. And it is a 3-step program that is to make the connection with realtors easier. You're going to let them try your inspector services for free the first time.
Nice.
After the second time, right, they're going to start to trust you. They understand what you give, right? You're going to give them 50% off. And at the third time, okay, they're at the belief stage. They understand. They believe that you can handle their business. You're going to give them a free added service. So what does that whole program do? It kind of takes you through that empathy stage, right? From, hey, get to know me, right? I know that you have concerns. but let me address those. Let me find a way to address those. So we take them through the 3-step process. And not only does it give a realtor a way to learn about an inspector, but our inspectors are helping that realtor become a hero to their clients.
I love it. I love that partnership mindset. And it really speaks to, I guess, this next question. Maybe we can dig in a little bit more here. Because when going to market, or whether you're launching a new product or entering a new market, there's always the challenge of aligning sales, the product service offering, and the success teams in such a way that, and also the customer, enabling them to be successful. And in this case, you have a trifecta. You have the end customer, you have the in-between, and then you've got yourself there. So it's more complex. And I appreciate what you've done, which is phenomenal, because you're basically meeting them there and making it easier for them to do business with you, to trial with minimal risk, removing the hurdle. And that requires a lot of alignment. And in your experience, where does that sometimes break down? Where does that alignment tend to break down? And what should other CMOs or even CEOs be aware of in their go-to-market where sometimes there's a misalignment? What should they be sort of looking out for that misalignment where it pertains to breakdown? What's been your experience with that?
My experience, we'll take this program that we just went over. The major misalignment is the reluctance for an inspector to give away their services, right? So people might think, I've been in this business, for 10 years. I no longer do free inspections, right? I am a seasoned professional. A brick and mortar store might feel the same way. It's like, we've been here for 5 years. We don't need to run these types of specials anymore. We're established. And what I push back on for that with our inspectors is, you absolutely have been in this business 10 years, but guess what? That realtor is new to you. That client, that customer is new to you. And you need to think of them in that manner. You're thinking from your perspective of, I've been here. I'm a 10-year veteran. You need to think of the perspective of the client and the customer. It's not about you.
Yeah, that's so true. And this is one of the reasons I love design thinking, because it encourages you to break down your assumptions and to be curious about what other people think, what experience they're wanting to have, and then be curious enough to understand the problem that you're trying to solve from their point of view. And it doesn't minimize your expertise or what you do. It's actually just empathetically showing up for what that customer needs. So I love that.
Yeah.
There's really no room for pride and ego, no matter how experienced you are, when it comes to building relationship with clients, right?
There really isn't. And you have to set all of that aside to think about, what problem are you solving for, right? And you're solving for a realtor who doesn't feel comfortable with you, who, has never used your services before, who needs a reason to believe, right? I'm a big believer in, what is the RTB? What is the reason to believe? You have to give them that reason. You have to show them your reason. My grandma always said, never believe somebody when they tell you who they are. Believe them when they show you who they are.
So true. So true. I mean, in some respect, you're talking about intuition here, right? Because, we live in a time where we're encouraged to be data driven. A lot of CMOs, heads of marketing, make decisions data driven, right? Which is good. That data can give you some great feedback, some good understanding of behavior and propensity and things of that, and past experiences. But it doesn't tell you the full story sometimes of why, what motivates someone and what's going on, what their lived experience is like. So can you share a story where perhaps the data showed one thing, but the intuition gave you different point of view and insight, and how you balanced, sort of intuition and analytics? Can maybe share an experience where they didn't necessarily align, but you chose the human element before just the data? Any any experience with that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I would say we have another program. It's our realtor referral program, right? And so the large majority of realtors find out about inspectors from other realtors, but they still need to feel comfortable with you, Trulio, right? They still need to understand what you give. And so we have this, a lot of our inspectors have a mindset of course they would refer me. Oh, I do a wonderful job. I do a wonderful job. Well, the truth is they don't.
There's confidence and then there's cockiness.
Right. And it's just like the truth is
difference, people.
this doesn't actually happen for you. You're not getting the referrals that you need. And guess what? You need to ask for it. You need to like literally say the words. And this actually, we have looked at the data of how many, transactions we do with, realtors, and, how many we get a good portion of their transactions with, and how many we get a small portion of their transactions with. And, it's not the picture we want it to be data-wise. It's not where we want it to be. And so to have these programs like the Realtor Referral Program, it could be, we have developed a program that after you do an inspection and you have a good relationship with them, like 3 inspections with them, you start to send them marketing materials, even call, text. We have all the scripts done for you. I know, I love working with you. Great realtors, no other great realtors. Can you put me in touch with another great realtor that I can work with? And, these are all, entrepreneurs. This is part of their daily lives, right? Realtors ask for referrals all day long. They're not bothered by it. The other thing that we found out is that a lot of our inspectors don't like asking for the business. Interesting, right? They don't mind having meetings. They don't mind going and doing trainings. They don't mind going and doing mock inspections. And then they go, thank you. It was great to meet you.
Right. There's no call to action to
There's no call to action.
Yeah. So you guys train them on this sort of thing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So in essence, an inspector that works with you guys actually elevates their entrepreneurship. They learn how to be salespeople. They learn how to listen and build relationship post the transaction. So it's not a one-time thing. They realize you want to build a rapport with this realtor because they're going to sell another home. You're going to call you again. So do you find also being intentional about educating not only the market, but those who are serving the market is key to all this? That's kind of what I'm hearing.
It's absolutely key, because a lot of times what you get, and I saw this in real estate as well, a lot of times the people who became brokers were great agents. That doesn't mean they were great brokers. It means they were great agents. And they didn't really understand how to run a brokerage. We also have some of that. We've made some changes into our executive model where we're actually, getting people with a more business mindset, but they still need to be trained because everybody comes with skills, right? You have great skills. I have great skills, but they might not be everything that we need to run a business. If you don't have the skills that, say sales and marketing is not your forte. Well, you know what? You better hire somebody, because your business is not going to succeed without it.
Or learn. So I think this next question, you've highlighted quite a bit of it already, because I can tell you guys are very intentional with how to turn your marketing into a revenue engine, tying into helping how to position yourself, asking for the self, training them on how to do that, building rapport, so critical. I'm just curious, how do you track who's progressing along and who isn't? Do you have like a CRM, some kind of a sales alignment measurement that allows you to see who's succeeding, who's not succeeding? Is that still a gap for you guys, or have you I guess I'm looking for the secret sauce. How do you track that across a number of inspectors to see who needs more love and who needs less love?
Yeah.
Do you have a system for that?
We do. So we have a 1-point system. It's an internal system where we can track the amount of business inspections. We can track their AJS rate, which is their average job size. We can track their add-ons and to see how they're doing. And then we have regional directors who also look at the data for each of their FBOs in terms of market share. And I believe they do that on a quarterly basis. So we are actively tracking for them, okay, what's working and what's not. But the one thing we also tell them too is when you are in a service-based business, when you are in a community-based business, then what works in one community might not work in another.
So
and
true.
It is important. So we have put together a sales and marketing spreadsheet for them. And, we have put in all the marketing programs that we have. We have put in prompts for them in terms of how often you can do this or you should do this. They can change all that. But this is a way, and I tell them, monitor this quarterly. If you come back to me at the end of the year and go, well, none of this worked, the first thing I'm going to say to you is, well, did you make changes after the first quarter? Did you do something different? Or did you continue to do ineffective things for an entire year? So we have really made an effort to put those tools into their hands to make them more effective business people, because they were very used to putting together operational plans, right, for them to become successful. When we put out the sales and marketing planning document, they were like, one of the things I got was, this is intense. I was like, this actually mirrors your operational planning document, and it's not intense, it's detailed. And that's what yours needs to be. It shouldn't be, oh, I've got a little extra money this month. Let me see what marketing I can do. That's ineffective.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and it really speaks to, I think, something I've noticed over the past 3 decades: the difference between corporate executives and entrepreneurs. Corporate executives are really good about being disciplined to repeat and scale what's working, to amplify what's working without deviating a whole lot, unless there's some changes or something that dictates the need to deviate. And they're very disciplined about it. That's how you scale a business. But entrepreneurs will tend to chase the shiny thing. They get bored, I guess, and they want to keep experimenting, but that is often an enemy to growth. What I'm hearing is, follow the process, stick with the process. And so I'm curious about, as you build like high performing teams, in your case, it's not just your own internal team. I'm curious how you develop marketing talent, how you help them hit performance goals, how you keep them engaged and inspired, but also how you help some of these franchise to maintain the same performance standards as well. Now you've got a bigger challenge because you're not just managing your internal team, you're also managing how the programs needed for those franchise to be effective at their job. So any particular model of framework that you use that has worked for you in developing talent and getting people to continuously learn and grow and be performance driven?
Yes. So one thing that I have learned in my career is to absolutely challenge people. And when I first enter a new team, one of my things is to have one-on-one conversations and really kind of flesh out where their comfort level is with being challenged. And if they don't have a comfort level with being challenged, they're probably not in the right spot, because marketing is always evolving. It's always changing. If you feel comfortable doing the same thing over and over and over again, right, and you don't feel comfortable with that more, not volatile isn't the right word, but ever changing, right, in terms of technology and things that we have to do, this isn't the right space. So that's my first conversation. And then once I do that, once I have that, I love to switch people around on teams. Because not only does that give them an opportunity to learn something new, but it also gives me an opportunity to hear another perspective. And it gives them an opportunity to have a more holistic view of what our role is in the organization. So I love cross-functional teams, and we'll push people to do different things. When somebody says, oh, but that isn't my job, it is now.
Yeah, that's actually very much aligned with succession planning too, to get more people involved, learn the business, and learn new skills. And would it be safe to assume that also keeps them more engaged and retains them longer? Because one of the things I've discovered over the years, at least when a team of us started radicalpurpose.org, we were looking at what keeps teams engaged, and we landed on these 4 principles, which is belong to something greater than yourself, to have meaning behind what you're doing, to be able to make an impact, and to be becoming, to grow. And often organization, if they synthesize and these 4 elements into the job opportunities and how people work, you retain people for a long time. What I'm hearing is elements of that, being adaptable. So there's an opportunity to grow and to learn and to do different things. So you got an opportunity to make an impact, and you realize you're not just a cog in the wheel. You've got other things you could learn to make a bigger contribution, gives greater meaning to your role, and you belong to something greater than yourself. You've done this. So I'm just curious about, is this something where you also help the franchise put in place?
Yeah, so I will say I agree with you 100% in terms of it has to be kind of bigger than themselves. And also from my standpoint as a leader, it's important that I will flat out say, I don't have all the answers. That's why you're here, right? You have a different perspective from me. You have a different knowledge base. You have different skill sets than me. That's why you're here. And I think that helps people feel a part of it. So in terms of our franchisees, one of the things that I have done since I came on board is I started what I call our marketing directors group. And what that is for our top 25 companies. A lot of them have marketing employees. So I thought, how can I make the biggest impact onto our franchisees and to our bottom, our revenue growth? And it's by changing those companies, right? Helping their marketing directors. So we have quarterly meetings where we meet with them, and it has become, and what I said to them, I said, I expect out of this group, the first meeting we have, I expect not only that we give you information to grow your business and become more effective marketers, but I also expect to learn just as much from you. Because if I can learn just as much from you, that changes the programs and the marketing and the collateral that I put in your hands that will make the biggest difference in your marketplace. So that's what I did there.
I love it. And actually, I really believe the number one job of our CMO is to build community, both internally and externally. And it sounds like you're doing that in spades. So congratulations.
Thank you.
One final question. This is, we ask all of our marketing leaders this question. It really speaks to the role of purpose, empathy, and impact. How do purpose and empathy shape the way you approach marketing today? And can you share maybe a personal story where your work had a meaningful impact on a customer or even an employee?
Yes, it's probably back into my other days in real estate, but there is a reason that I came here, and I love working with entrepreneurs. And the reason I love working with entrepreneurs is because these people get up every day and they've got their life in their own hands. They're deciding how far they want to go, what they want to do, and they are fully responsible for themselves. And I admire the heck out of that. And so I had been working with a company and a real estate company, and we had helped them. He wanted a lot of marketing help, and he didn't tell me until the end why he wanted it. Spent a lot of time with him, more time than I probably should have. And he said, he finally said to me one day, he goes, I'm going to retire in 3 years. He goes, that's why you were here. That's why you were helping me. And, and so, I don't know if I helped him bring empathy to his clients, but he told me the way I treated him made him feel valued, and that, my view of his business changed the way he viewed his business and allowed him to do things differently to reach the goals he wanted to reach, because he couldn't see it from the outside. He was too mired in the day to day. Whereas coming from the outside, I could see a bigger picture, and I saw something in him. He was very good in the community. And we kind of leaned into that, and it really helped him take off and get a lot of new agents. He was able to recruit a lot of new agents. So that's probably my biggest success story, and kind of merging those things.
I love that. And, we don't often talk about this, but many business owners, they've been doing the same thing for years. And not all of them will admit it. Some of them are just tired. Yeah. They, in some cases, not even excited to go up and show up in their own company, because they're just burnt out. Everything goes through them. So when you bring a leader that changes that dynamic, that infuses new energy, gives them new hope, supports them in a way that maybe they haven't been supported before, it's almost like giving them their life back, their wings back. And it's magical to see. So thanks for sharing that with us. I'm sure you had a wonderful impact on him. Yeah. Becky, thank you for joining us on the Marketing with Purpose series. It's been great to speak with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Tulio. I've really enjoyed it. It was a great conversation.
I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas for how you can align strategy, execution, and purpose in your own work. If you found value in this discussion, please like, subscribe, and share it to keep the conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just sell, it serves. See you next time.